What's up, guys? Frank here with my man Joe from Gojira. Joe, it's amazing to see your beautiful face again. It's been a minute.
Thank you. It's good to see your beautiful face too.
You know, you've been very busy, not only creating Fortitude, an amazing new album, but also getting heavily involved in the future of the Amazon forest. An initiative I cannot stress is so important to the world and humanity as we know it, and something I really wanted to talk to you about today. You know, first the album itself. You know, the artwork, the lyrics really serve as a tool to create awareness on the issues surrounding Amazonia. What was the catalyst? You know, the thing that made you want to divert your attention and collective voice to this initiative.
We're based, what we do on our emotions and our vision of life, and we're trying to sculpt and define our values and try to find something that keeps us going, that makes sense for us. The way we view humanity is sometimes it's hard, man. There's a lot of us on this tiny little planet, the way we're using resources, the way we behave, the way the economy, our political systems, education, money, all these things. It's a mess to organize things amongst us humans, and sometimes there's some things that are forgotten or looked upon the wrong way, and people that have a tendency to disconnect themselves from nature when really we are nature. We cannot do that, just disconnect ourselves and talk about nature like it's something else, something outside of our world, because we are inside nature. We are part of nature. We're part of this world, and our actions and our words and our thoughts matter. So we always have a reflection on that when we write songs, and when I write, lyrics, I try to communicate something. Mario's here. We're on tour. I remember precisely when we wrote the song Amazonia. We met at the studio, and that same day in the morning, we saw on the news that the Amazon forest was on fire, and we showed up really depressed. It came from a very simple feeling, in our hearts. It was just difficult to see the Amazon forest with what it represents for our humanity and for the world, and for diversity and animals, to see the Amazon forest on fire. And it's not something new, and haters will say, "Oh, come on, man, fire is a part of life and it's normal." I love fire. I can't spend one day without making a little fire myself, a fire, but it's not the point. There's more than 80,000 fires going at the same time. It was the most fires we've ever seen, and it shows that global warming is a real issue. When you see all these fires, this summer, there was a lot of fires everywhere in Greece and Turkey and everywhere. So obviously it's also a consequence of our way of life. But in the Amazon, the problem is a little more complicated. It's not only global warming, but it's also attached to our way of life. It's also a consequence of how we consume. The Amazon forest is cut down mainly for animal consumption and cattle and growing soybeans. So human activity is really the problem here. And when we buy something in the supermarket, we don't realize it, but very often it is directly linked to atrocities committed, like criminal activities, unacceptable activities. So, we decided to make a song, just that. And then one thing leading to the other, we decided to, hey, what about while we release the song, we really do something to really address the problem and do something. It might be a drop in the ocean, but it's a drop, and the ocean is made of drops, So there's nothing else than drops, so it might as well be one of them.
And you're absolutely right about these things happening, and global warming is yet another pandemic that people don't really think of it in that way. But COVID is only one pandemic going on in the world right now. But going back to this, Brazil's president he's awful. Yeah, he's awful. and exploiting the land that affects the entire world for profit and development, and plans to pull indigenous rights to the land. I know you not only voiced your concerns through every channel possible, but you put thought into action and actually went to protest at the Capitol building a couple months ago. Can you tell us about that experience and what that protest was like?
It was pretty insane. I just thought I just need to go, I just need to go. And at some point it became personal, because the idea was to connect people and, act. But the minute I started to talk to these people that are on site, the activists, the real ones that are always fighting and dedicating their entire life to that, compared to them, I'm a little baby activist. I'm a musician. I go on tour. I write songs. I worry about my feelings and stuff like that. I met people that are real activists. They dedicate their entire life to that, and their entire energy is directed to address one problem. And when you do that, when you tackle one problem like that, dedicating your entire life to it, you also realize the other problems that exist around the world, and you become more sensitive to them. So you got to have a good shield, a good armor to protect yourself, because you could become really depressed and angry all the time. I think it's a matter of finding the right balance. Myself, I was only trying to use my position as a public figure, whatever you call it, like a musician with some followers, to put the spotlight on the problem. Going there made the whole thing become personal for me. I met these wonderful, incredible people that are on a whole other level of harmony with nature and respect. They have a sense of togetherness in their communities, and an intelligence of the heart. Nobody in their communities is left behind. For example, you could be, you could have a Down syndrome or something. You're going to be treated exactly like everybody else in the community. And I saw that with my own eyes, and they received me with so much love, and put a lot of necklaces around my neck. And there was this ceremony when I arrived, and they baptized me, and they took me in. I am officially part of the Guarani Kiowa tribe now, which was an incredible honor. The shaman put this around my wrist, and I never left it since. It became personal. It became my family, it became my friends, these people, in just a few days, because it was so intense. And I was walking with them side by side on the streets of Brasilia, protesting. I went there with a few friends, and there was not a lot of support from the local Brazilians. The non-indigenous people were not part of that. So there was very little support, international support, to my surprise, actually. I thought I was going to be part of a wave of gringos, showing up to show some support and to apologize for whatever we're doing to the forest. And we weren't a lot of us. It was just a few of us, yeah.
So it was primarily just the indigenous people who were protesting, or
there was about 6,000 people coming from the four corners of Brazil, mostly the Amazon forest. It's a little difficult to describe exactly what I mean by Amazonian tribes, because most of them are in the Amazon basin, the Amazon forest area, but there's other tribes that are outside of the forest now, because there is so much deforestation happening that some of them live in surrounded by fields for monoculture and cattle raising and soybeans and all that stuff. So they're not this exotic image, that you have of people naked in the forest shooting arrows with feathers, but they're still living in a very, very traditional way and beautiful, and they have their traditional costumes, but they're surrounded by, desolated areas. And I thought they would be more corrupted by the way, our ways, the Western ways with alcohol and driving cars or whatever. I thought, they can still be indigenous people and have their DNA could be 100%, but surely they can't keep up their way of life like that when they're surrounded by zero forest. Because I went on purpose in one of these desolated areas, which is Mato Grosso do Sul. So some people will argue, well, man, this is not the Amazon forest. Well, these guys were in the forest before, and they were the first tribe to encounter the first conquistadors, and hundreds of years ago. So they were the first victims of the white man.
Right.
So that's where it was, in the south of Brazil. But their ways and their cultures and their ceremonies and their everyday life is so pure and so oriented towards good values and family values and togetherness and spiritual experiences. They use, for example, a certain type of material to build their houses, wood and grass. Unfortunately, it's an easy target for the local mafia that wants to push the Bolsonaro's agenda. The president of Brazil is all about development, economy, making more money. He wants to increase the business with China as much as possible. So he's building this huge highway and train track through the Amazon to go to the Pacific side to increase the commerce with China. So he has plans to make, to really eradicate the forest as much as possible. Somebody is going to stop this guy.
It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. And again, it's something that not just affects a small population, but like really the entire world by
entire world.
Yeah,
this is our garden.
Yeah.
At some point there's no borders. When we talk about oxygen, we talk about ocean, we talk about natural resources, we can't talk about borders. I've heard a few times, come on, man, go take care of France. Why don't you? This is Brazil. You have nothing to do here. Well, guess what? I'm a human being. I live on this planet and I worry for this planet, not necessarily for the planet itself. Planet Earth will be fine, after we're gone. But I don't know. I believe in also the power that there is in every intention, every gesture, every thought that we have, like I was mentioning earlier. I'm more into, trying to make sure that my intentions and my words are based on something noble and pure, instead of falling in the whole cynical thing. You know what I mean? We're all doomed anyway. Let me have a drink to the end of the world. I don't know. I don't want to think like that.
And I agree with you. And I think, again, every small change could impact a much bigger one. And I have so much respect for what you and Gojira do, with putting out the word and raising money to make these changes. And, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, the fight isn't over. They are still pending this really important life-changing bill currently, right?
Yes. And I understand the dynamic. It's very, very simple to understand. But so you have 6,000 indigenous that came out of the forest, sometimes travel for 6 days to go to Brasilia, and they're not used to that. Really, when you see them, they're so vulnerable when they get out of the forest, because that's where they belong, and they need the rivers and the trees to survive. And in Brasilia, they're not really welcomed by the local population. So the government, instead of voting something against the indigenous while they're protesting, they're dragging the decision as much as possible to exhaust them. So to see them going back in the forest and then, boom, vote that bill that will deprive them from their lands once they're gone, to avoid a fuss. You know what I mean? So that's what's happening. It's because the indigenous presence is so strong in Brasilia right now. Like I said, 6,000 indigenous that represent more than 300 different tribes. And they're beautiful to watch, by the way. I stayed with them. I spent a few nights with them. I saw their ceremonies and the way, I don't know, they express. They're very proud too. They have some warrior dances and some paintings and feathers. It's absolutely beautiful to watch. But while they're there, I think the government doesn't want to finish the decision, so they're dragging. So this whole process is super long.
Right.
It's just a very simple, sneaky technique to try to pass that bill and hoping not to create too much fuss around it.
Right. They're waiting for everybody to kind of let their guard down so that they can do something stupid.
Yeah, that's why I think it's important to post the simple fact that the international community knows what's going on over there and talks about it. And of course, it's not the only problem in the world, but right now I'm just focusing on that because it's underestimated the impact of that law. Because here's the deal. These people are the protectors of the forest. If somebody goes and cut down the trees, they're going to raise their voice and say something. So we should be alerted by their problems because it's our problem. Mm-hmm. Indigenous people problems are everybody's problems.
Every person watching this right now, or out there reading about what you're doing, it affects them.
Yeah, and we hear about the Amazon forest in many ways, and some people say that the Amazon forest is the lungs of the earth. It's just an image. Some people will argue that no, wait, the oceans are the lungs of the earth. Right. Of course, but the Amazon represent about 20% of this oxygen. We should not look lightly at this 20%. You know what I mean? And we should also worry about the oceans. The Amazon is also a symbol. It's the last ancient forest standing. I think half. If what I read is correct, and I read it several times, but half of all animal species and half of all plant species are in the Amazon forest.
Yeah, it's wild. And you're specifically advocating for the articulation of indigenous peoples of Brazil, a great organization that takes care of the culture, the land, and the peoples of these tribes that are being affected and what you're talking about. Can you tell us about how you linked up with them specifically, and some of the work that you've maybe done with them, or perhaps maybe some of the plans they have?
Absolutely. I have a New Yorker Brazilian activist friend, Adriana Varela, who actually I borrowed a bit of her voice to put at the end of the song Amazonia and on the album. It's a little subliminal, but I wanted to put this protester vibe at the end of the thing, and you hear a voice in the background. That's her. She's an artist, activist. She lives in New York, and we've been friends for years. And I called her when I wanted to do the whole Amazonia, the Operation Amazonia. I wanted to do something for the Amazon forest, and she directed me to the indigenous problem. She said, if you want to tackle the Amazon problem from a human perspective, you have to talk about the indigenous people, because they are threatened, they're raped, they're harassed, their villages are burned down by farmers and big corporations. There's an emergency there, and that's prior to the whole PL 490 bill that was going to be voted to be able to take away their lands. So that's before that, because they were already victim of Bolsonaro's politics. Mm-hmm. In so many ways. You can read about it. I'm not going to go through all of that now, but it's absolutely scary what's going on. I cannot believe this is happening in 2021. It reminds me of the Inquisition that was going on in Europe when the Catholic Church was burning witches on public, plaza, in the middle of the village, with no judgment, nothing. Oh, he's talking to the devil, let's burn him right away, with no judge. It reminds me of that a little bit, of what's going on over there. Yeah. So we need to step up and raise our voice, say something about it. But Adriana hooked me up with the indigenous. I had the absolute privilege to be in touch with Sonia Guajajara, who's from the tribe Guajajara in the Amazon forest, in the heart of the Amazon forest. And she's the leader of that movement, APIB. That is, it's a new thing for the indigenous. They usually on their own, and they sometimes never meet, and they never know of another tribe. Sometimes they're very isolated. And this woman decided to start this movement. She studied a lot. She even ran for president in 2018, president of Brazil, as a statement, to protest and to draw attention on the indigenous problem. And it worked, because she became Bolsonaro's #1 enemy, and she became a figure in Brazil for the indigenous protection. So I met her several times now. And we had some Zoom meetings. I didn't want to go step into something that I don't know fully, and I always double check that I wasn't doing anything disrespectful or talking nonsense about their problems. So I was always checking in with Sonia Gojira and my friend Adriana, and there's so many people. Ana Luisa, also in New York, another activist that worked with Sting in the 90s when he was worried about the Amazon. So I was in touch with some great people, mostly in New York City, because that's where I live, and then in the Amazon. Raphael, also from London. Am I starting to drop names now? There's so many people that help me. It's very difficult to go through the list.
No, it's great. I love that you remember them and give them credit.
Studio manager right now, so Robin Hood, it's his real name, stepped up and came with me to film. So we filmed this sort of a little documentary that I will put it together a little later. It was such an incredible experience. I was in touch with also French TV. I did something for the French TV. They were interested in my adventures, and I sort of did like a journalist kind of job when I was there, and sent some footage and talked about the problem for French TV. That was pretty cool.
I love it. This organization is just APIB is such a powerhouse in correcting this problem and being at the front of it all, you know.
Absolutely. So if you want to know more about this, you can go on their website, APIB. And you will learn a lot. You can donate some money to help them. They need support right now. What they need is to defend themselves from the attacks of the farmers that grow the soybean and the meat that you guys eat. So we need to feel responsible for that, and we need to support the people that are suffering from our way of life. So if anything, I would like to ask people to make sure whatever they eat, whatever they buy, is not coming from this area of the world, because it's a disaster what's happening now. And yeah, the vote is not done for this PL 490 bill that is aiming to take away their lands for good. So it's still time to raise hell and to make some noise and to try to protect them.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, Brooklyn Whiskers. Yeah, I love that place.
Yeah, love that place too.
I don't want to turn this into a forum to judge anyone or tell people what to do. But as I mentioned, you and I are both avid vegans for compassion and environmental reasons, in part for many of the reasons that we're talking about and these topics that we're talking about and discussing today. How do you feel about the state of veganism and even the divide and people who straight up refuse to or look down on it?
Well, it's not easy to be a vegan. It's like unveiling something in your life, and you look through the curtain and you decide, you choose to watch something that you didn't want to watch before. You accept to face the ugly truth of how we consume animals and the pain that is generated and the pollution and so it's definitely a big shift in one's life to become a vegan, and then you can't help but seeing this ugly truth all the time. But I feel there's probably a way to invite people to think about that, and I'm trying to be as a public speaker, I have to be careful with my words and peaceful. I want to have a peaceful vibe. I just want to say that being vegan is awesome, because you first of all, you lose weight without working out, and the food you put in your body was created without raping anyone or cutting any throats. So I think it's pretty cool.
Obviously, wholeheartedly agree. Now, Joe, since the very first day I met you, I think all the way back in like 2007, I've had nothing but just a tremendous amount of respect for you and Gojira, not only musically, but advocating for all the right changes, and taking part in activism and really, asking people to, more than anything, to think beyond themselves and to a much bigger world that exists out there. And, has this always been part of your life, or is it like something that you found through your voice in Gojira?
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for what you said. And I was lucky to receive an education from my parents. Everything starts with education, but then there's a personal part. We all have different shapes and minds and ideas. And of course, some of us are more sensitive than others, regardless how you were born and what upbringing you received or education you received. With some people are more sensitive than others. I'm extremely sensitive. If I walk into a room, I can feel if somebody's not feeling well, or if there was a tension just before a fight, I will pick that up immediately and start to sort of, feel it physically and either leave the room or I have to address it. I can't just be like that and be like, oh my God, what is this huge tension? I have to get to the bottom of it, Right. It's kind of, and as a kid, I was really shocked by anything that was unfair or injustice in general. Always horrified me. So it was just naturally that I started to look at animals and be like, hey, I don't want to eat you, So I think it was always there, but there was people on the way that helped me to open my eyes and to open my heart. And I thank them. A bunch of vegans that, I met before that inspired me to make a change in my life. And I feel way better. Also, I never have problems in my guts anymore. I used to be very bloated, after eating and feeling like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. I have to sit down. I have to open my mouth. It doesn't happen anymore because all the food I eat is alive and it melts right away, and it's more adapted to the human body for some reason.
Well, Joe, again, I have nothing but the utmost respect for you, and you're one of my favorite humans and one of my favorite bands, and I look forward to giving you a hug again soon, buddy.
Oh man, thank you so much. And I'm back in the statewise,
Okay.
Europe for a little bit, and so we can definitely meet in Brooklyn.
Yeah, let's go eat some vegetables in Brooklyn at some point.
Yep, yeah. I'm gonna finish this tour first.
Yeah. Everyone, please be sure to pick up Fortitude, one of the best albums of the year, and please donate to the APIB. The link is below. Check it out.